In League Two, more saddle sores for Walsall. George, they lost at home to Swindon. What have you got to say to the Walsall fans who are getting twitchy as hell?
I mean, I don't know what there is to say. They've gone from being the most professional, efficient side who were just clinical in terms of getting things done and getting over the line with minimal fuss, to suddenly being a team that seemingly just cannot get over the line, cannot find ways to win games. Or for their fans, if you told their fans heading into extra time in midweek at Cheltenham that their game against Cheltenham and their game against Swindon at home was going to yield 1 point when they were 2-0 up going into injury time, it would have seemed unthinkable. And 3 points against Cheltenham in that game probably sees them with a gap that is too big. And realistically, I would say, to get over the line there, they probably don't lose this game 1-0. But you can understand why they were nervy. And they were nervy. It was it was a performance against the Swindon side who've been pretty good this season, where they were by no means bad. They created some opportunities. I think they probably should have had a penalty with Liam Gordon being tugged back, not given a 0-0. They made it, from the goal itself, it's a second ball after a decent save. But they've got, when you look at their team and their players, you think there should be enough in there to kind of see them manage the situation they're in a little bit better than they currently are. Like, you've got Albert Adoma, who has been there and done it and seen it. You've got Ellis Harrison and Jamil Matt up front. These are all senior pros who you anticipate would be able to, ensure that everything is coming. And, in fairness, you look at because of the way that the results have gone and the way that they've managed to throw away points from dominant positions. This is their first defeat since the 2-1 defeat against Colchester, so their first defeat in 5. They had won 2 games prior to the Cheltenham game. Like, it's not a full-on hope. Tuesday night is just so important when they go to Carlisle, and a defeat there, and you really are getting nervous about not only their winning the title, but also the teams beneath them catching up, and their spot in the automatic promotion positions, because they aren't. That's not done yet by any stretch, even though you should think they should have enough. And it feels like a very bad time to play Carlisle, as we'll get into in a second, after their seismic win at the beginning of the weekend. So they're not playing very well right now, Walsall. They're probably still, a top 7 team? But there was a time where they were the best team in the league by miles, and that time is over.
Yeah, and they're conquerors, Swindon Town. Talk to me about, I'll tell you actually, about 28 points in their last 14 games, a 2 PPG record with 8 wins. Only Notts and Bradford picking up more points in the league in that time. This is just their 4th away win of the season in 18 games. The first time they've beaten a team currently in the top 7, home or away. And they're just ticking off more and more achievements under Ian Holloway. One thing that springs to mind when I look at their team is how he, in my eyes, basically has a team that is split almost evenly between, to use the old Tony Mowbray expression, soldiers and artists. And it's quite cool in that he's got, in attack, Shimanga and Smith, broadly soldiers, I would say, goal scorers as well. And he's got Nichols and the match winner Cotterill, who are more technical types. In the centre of the park, he's got Offerbore and he's got Kilkenny, again, a soldier and an artist. Even at the back, where you've got Will Wright, who's technically brilliant for a centre-back at this level, not always the strongest defender, but he's surrounded by Clark, who's a real warrior for this level. Ripley in goals, obviously excellent. Freckleton, more of a defensive-minded fullback. And the youngster McGregor, back from injury, straight back in the starting lineup, is a really nice, tenacious young player as well, the 18-year-old, who I like a lot. So I just think it's really great, and I'm really impressed. And this is just the latest reason to be impressed with the Swindon side, who have won 6 of their last 8 league games. Quite remarkable, really. I must admit, I have been studying the league table, looking for a way to suggest they could make the playoffs, and I haven't been able to make it work, I'm afraid, which is a shame. The big story of League Two at the moment continues to be Bradford City. They continue to win football matches. They've done so twice since we last spoke, both away from home, once at Bromley, once at Salford, therefore both away at home against teams in the top 10, having not beaten any team away from home that's currently in the top half before last Monday. They did so both with late winning goals, George. It is really, really fun to watch when teams go on runs like this, where they just feel invincible. It's 12 wins in 16 for Bradford City.
They are a team. I mean, talking a second ago about Walsall not being the best team in the league, there's no denying who is and who are. And it's funny, everyone else who follows League Two closely over the last few seasons would have thought that the injury to Andy Cook was probably going to put an end to their challenge for the top 7, let alone the top 3. Such a seismically important player for them, such a big presence, not just his goal-scoring presence, but the way that he leads the line. And yet, shows what we all know about football. I think it's basically cannot question now that Andy Cook getting injured has probably been a good thing for Bradford. It has enabled them to be a much more functional attacking side. It has enabled them to be way more aggressive out of possession, pressing from the front. And the results kind of speak for themselves now. They've lost one game dating back to Christmas. That was a defeat away at AFC Wimbledon, which they lost 1-1. They've drawn 2 games, both away games against Barrow and Newport County, and they have won every single other game in that spell. That is, 12 games in 15. Like, it is unbelievable what they're doing. And in every promotion season and every title-winning season, there are moments within those that fans will remember for a long time. And if and probably when Bradford, have a success at the end of this season, there is no denying that Michael Mellon's goal at Salford will be remembered by all the fans who were there, because the significance of going 1-0 down to Okoronkwo scoring the initial goal after, you could argue, Bradford had a better of the opening exchanges within the game. To come back from that and to score 2 late goals, Halliday in the back post, followed by Mellon scoring with a kind of squeeze finish into the far corner in front of the away fans. There is an amazing clip from the fans, kind of a video taken from the stand, where I loved you can hear someone saying, "It's effing Michael Mellon," and I'm having like, what about him is why is that funny? Why the fact that it's him? Like, isn't he not quite a likely goal scorer in that situation? But it's just the delirium and the joy. And yeah, as I say, it feels like this is something special is happening at Bradford now. And it's been a long time since that's been the case. And Saturday was a proper moment where it goes from being like, can we do this, to like, yeah, we're going to do this.
So it's funny that you say, what is it about effing Michael Mellon? We had a comment was it on one of our YouTube videos? A Bradford fan messaged us, here you go, James Pilkington 7576, come on down. Because before this game, it's a poorly timed comment. I feel bad to dig out James. But he said, I agree with you boys about my boys at Bradford. Incredible phrasing. He said, we are playing so good, it's great to watch. But we are without a goal-scoring striker at the min, with Cookie out injured, because Lee and Mellon are offering nothing at this point. So that changed over the weekend. Mellon's offering late winners for those Bradford fans, and I'm pleased about it. I'm not quite sure what's happened to Salford, by the way. I suppose it feels like your bit of analysis when they were doing well, which is like, yeah, I've supported a team managed by Carl Robinson. They often have like incredible runs of form where it feels like you'll never lose again, and quite often you do. And when you do lose, then you lose quite a few. And it doesn't escape me that they got 7 of their 13 total wins this season in a 5-week stretch of 8 games. The great defence of that period is gone. They're not exactly a chance creation machine either. It's always been a bit more of an individual-based attack. Lots of work to do to make the playoffs, which previously looked kind of nailed on. And we hope that Anthony Sartsevich's injury is not too serious there. Donny had a really comfy home win against Newport. 3-0 the scoreline. Rob Street, possibly fortunate not to be blown for a foul in the build-up to him tapping them in front. The second goal, there was no argument with. Molyneux had hit the bar and Street finished the rebound. Molyneux was on sparkling form. And I think with 12 goals and 7 assists this season, there's a couple of players with more goal contributions. Michael Cheek, definitely one of them. But Molyneux has to be a player of the season contender. He played a ball to Gibson, which saw Gibson hit the post. And then they swapped sides. Gibson, from a deep right position, played a beautiful raking crossfield ball. First time on the volley, Molyneux smashed it into the far corner. It's like a sort of League Two version of that famous Van Persie goal, running onto a Rooney pass and finishing over his shoulder. The technique is magnificent. His ball striking is incredible. And, a good win for Donny. I find them a bit of a weird team sometimes. Their home record is absolutely mad. They haven't beaten anyone in the top half of the table at home this season, Doncaster. But they basically smash anyone in the bottom half. And that was the case for Newport here. Back-to-back 3-0 defeats for Newport. I think I'm going to call them, George, the earliest beachy team in the EFL. And they fit all the criteria.
I just called Stevenage.
Oh, okay.
But they can both be there together.
Yeah. For me, Newport
I don't think Stevenage want to be on the beach, crucially. Whereas I think Newport kind of fancy it. So maybe you're right.
They just fit the criteria for me of a team that just really wanted to avoid relegation, so they can, so the 2, 3, 4 year plan can continue without a hitch. They're currently 14 points clear of it, which is quite a lot with not many games to go. But they're not particularly good. And I think when that's the case, if you're not actually a very good team, but you've been striving for everything, you basically achieve your main goal. I think it's not that surprised that you get a little bit of slippage in motivation and execution. Big game or entertaining game involving Notts County, who are near the top. They drew 2-2 with Fleetwood. Probably the better side, Notts in the first half and ahead through Abbott. But Fleetwood came roaring back in the second half. Graydon scoring a penalty after a mistake at the back between Notts centre-back and goalkeeper. He then scored a brilliant second goal just 2 minutes later. And the Highbury Stadium is absolutely rocking. Great strike from Graydon. But Notts did quite well to regather their composure. They looked beaten to me, but in the 89th minute, Abbott with the ball across for Jatta. He'd had big chances already, as he always seems to, and he took that one to equalise for them and go joint top of the goal-scoring charts with Stevens and Cheek. Hell of a golden boot race we've got. Speaking of Cheek, good weekend for his Bromley side, going to Wimbledon and winning by 1-0. This is a bit of fun, George, because these two teams, last few times they played, once was in the Conference South. They also played in the Isthmian division against each other as well. Now up in League Two and Bromley doing the business. Yeah,
I mean, a really good result for Bromley. Not many teams go to AFC Wimbledon and beat them. Bromley, I'd say, one of the hardest teams to kind of pick in the whole league. That's 4 wins in the last 5 now, all of which were to nil. It's been a really impressive first season for them. Under Andy Woodman. The goal itself was a very rare mess from Wimbledon's perspective. Lewis and Goodman kind of having a real mix-up for a ball over the top and kind of let it go for each other, allowing White to slip in and finish into the open net. Wimbledon had chances to get back into the game, didn't take any of them. Not ideal for them, given Walsall are losing their game. Wimbledon very much one of the sides that can absolutely chase Walsall down. And a home game, certainly frustration, I'm sure, on their part. They weren't able to pick anything up from it, but they've been on a magnificent run, this putting an end to it. But there was nothing of great alarm within the performance itself. Just a Bromley side who are in decent nick at the moment, getting one over them.
Yeah, my brother was at this game, and he's a League Two enthusiast, not an expert, I think it's fair to say. He's also a man that, and I've never worked out if he does it on purpose or not, just absolutely loves to get people's names just slightly wrong in a way that really winds up his slightly anal brother on this stuff. I asked him what he thought of the game, and he said first half mostly Bromley. Wimbledon offered little. Second half a bit better. Triple sub made a difference. Horrible mix-up for the goal. All good stuff. He said Bromley probably just about deserved it. Clark Webster was excellent at the back.
Amazing.
Incredible. Well done, him. And Matt, who's a Wimbledon fan that I've chatted to as well off the back of this game, said really impressed with Bromley, to be honest. In particular, the way that they managed to stop the wing-backs, Josh the Knife and James Tilley, from doing what they normally do so well at Plough Lane. Chesterfield 1, Crewe 3. You know what? I don't know what's happened to Chesterfield. And maybe I'm overstretching here, and I just can't get past Paul Cook's interview after the Walsall game, where they'd been ahead and they let it slip and Walsall came back to win. And he just said, well, that's basically us done now. Playoffs too far away. Players have, so he was so angry with the players. And he ended their season 13, 14 games early. Since then, their performances have been desperate. I mean, they lost the last game with a horrendous performance, and then here at home to Crewe, who are missing quite a few players. Crewe hadn't scored a goal in the first half of any away game this season. But Shiloh Tracy said, don't worry about that. Bouncing ball, Chesterfield defence not clearing it. Shiloh Tracy, bang, top corner. Then they scored their second away first half goal this season when Chesterfield gave it away in midfield. Poor response to going behind. Max Conway takes it all the way for 2-0. And Duffy smashed one in to make it 2-1 for Chesterfield with a few minutes left. But Tommy Lowry in injury time. Nice to see him back at Crewe. Great scenes, I imagine, in the away end after a big away win for Crewe. And they needed it. It's back-to-back wins now after 6 without. They are still in 7th spot. They have a good cushion to Grimsby and then Salford. They've got Fleetwood next, Crewe, and then an absolutely stinking run of 6 games, all against top 10 teams. So they really need to be ready to hold their own and hold on to that playoff spot. But this was a really impressive away win. And I'm just I feel, God, this is dramatic, isn't it? I feel a bit let down by Chesterfield. I really expected them to be good pre-season. Weren't they favourites for the title with some bookies?
Yeah, joint favourites, I think. It's always the way for the team that comes up.
Joint favourites for the title. Started quite brightly this season, not necessarily getting the results that their performances deserved. Loads of injuries, yes. Quite a lot of turnover in January as well. For them to be 15th and having lost more games than they've won, I think that's really disappointing, I must admit. Who would have picked, as Hugh Davis said on WhatsApp to me over the weekend, who'd have guessed that Bromley, of the 2 National League promoted teams, would be 5 places above, 6 points above Chesterfield?
There's something about League Two where this seems to happen every year. Not necessarily, obviously Notts County were basically exactly the same last year, or they had a manager change that impacted it. But League Two just seems to be a league where good teams can just suddenly just vanish. MK Dons have done it this season as well. We've seen Chesterfield do it, so Notts County do it last season. It's interesting. I wonder why.
Cheltenham and Grimsby drew 1-1. Grimsby just outside the playoffs, 6 unbeaten now, coming back in this one. Jordan Wright saved a penalty in the first half, the Grimsby keeper. They've given away 6 this season. The opposition have only scored 2 of them. Jordan Wright with 3 saves and another missed as well. But Cheltenham have this move they've been doing all year where they play their set pieces to like 20, 25 yards out for a long shot. Normally it's Luke Young that spanks them in. In this case, it was the Manchester United youngster Ethan Williams finding the corner with a nice strike. But then in the second half, Jason, the Icelandic daddy, went on a mission for Grimsby, set up Harvey Rogers for 1-1, an away point for Grimsby. Not to be sniffed at given Cheltenham's recent form. MK Dons 0, Colchester 1. George, this was slated to be a chat about Colchester United, but they've been gazumped as MK have sacked Scott Lindsey. How has this happened?
How has it taken this long?
This was not meant to happen. This was meant to be the sure thing.
I'm absolutely not one to advocate early sackings of managers, but it's been really obvious that something's up at MK for a long time now. And I know that they obviously started unbelievably well under Scott Lindsey, and maybe that's bought him some time. But, the results have been bad. The performances have been so bad. Like, it can consistently within games, just struggling to mount any kind of attacking threat. You look through, they've won one game they won 2 games this calendar year, because the first came on New Year's Day away at the aforementioned Chesterfield, and they beat Harrogate 2-1. But against Colchester at home, against Bradford away, against Barrow away, against Bromley at home, they are seeing quite a lot of the ball and doing very, very little with it. And, they had 5 shots in the game against Colchester on Saturday, 0.2 expected goals. They had 5 shots away at MK Dons, away at Bradford, 0.38 expected goals. 7 shots at Barrow, 0.69. Consistently in games, they are not creating enough chances to be competitive within games. And that, considering the obvious quality within their squad, something is up. And, obviously with Scott Lindsey, the job he did at Crawley was so special and so good. As I said at the time when he was appointed, everything looked on paper like it was going to be perfect. This was a great squad. Liam Kelly back with Lindsey having to deliver promotion last season, playing the kind of football we expect to see from MK Dons. But there was that one nagging thing, which was all the underlying data said that Crawley weren't very good. All the underlying data, all the numbers, all the XG stuff, Corey Dye's ridiculous shot-stopping season, all of it suggested that Crawley were incredibly fortunate to get promoted, and to therefore hire a manager off the back of that season just looked like it could have been a trap. And at this stage, it looks like it was a trap, because, this MK Dons side are way worse than Crawley were last season in terms of what they're doing. But it now kind of feels like whatever Lindsey managed to capture for that period, he wasn't able to bottle it, and he wasn't able to take it to MK Dons, and he hasn't been able to repeat the trick again. And even though I would have loved him to do well, and I hope that we see Scott Lindsey go back to a club and improve them and impress again, when you consider what he did last season, I find it kind of hard to do so right now. And MK Dons are incredibly wealthy after the takeover. They're incredibly ambitious. And frankly, I'm amazed that it took as long as it has done for him to be shown the door. Interesting to see where they go next. Ben Gladwin has come in as their interim, stepping up in the meantime. It should be interesting to see how he gets on.
Yeah, Gladwin's in as interim. The statement said, be taking the team for a couple of weeks with a staff around him. Makes it seem like they're taking their time, which makes sense because the season's basically over for them. And what a disappointing one it is. Sort of feels like, and it's, I don't like saying stuff like this because I never really know about a team's culture and what it's like behind the scenes, but it feels to me like MK Dons need to work it out both in terms of playing culture and identity and playing style, where they've obviously gone down a route that is at this level fairly extreme, and for whatever reason, and maybe it's nothing tactical, and maybe it's nothing to do with the squad that's been built to play this style of football, but it certainly hasn't worked very, very well, and they've not been as difficult to play against as you would want to be if you're playing that kind of way. But then off the pitch, it's always difficult to say, but the new expectations of the new ownership, I often think that the culture is set by the ownership, by the standards that they demand, but also by the way they go about implementing those standards across the club. And it's a club that had the same person owning and running it since its very formation, its whole existence, and now it has a different group of people, and that is seemingly, from the outside anyway, causing some awkwardness and needs to be sorted. A big story down the bottom of the league was Barrow 0, Carlisle 1 on Thursday night at Barrow. Carlisle scoring a brilliant goal. I couldn't help but chuckle seeing a team that had barely scored in the past half a dozen games or so, and for most of the season, putting together a move that involved a pass into Embleton, a back heel into Sedwin Scott, another back heel into Matthew Dennis, who then took a touch and found the bottom corner. Just a lot of quality. And actually, I'd watched the second half of that game against Gillingham from the weekend before, where they drew 0-0, but they played some really good attacking football in the second half of that game as well. I think it's only a matter of time before one of those moves ended in a goal. And they defended their lead pretty well. Barrow struggled to create a lot of clear-cut chances, which speaks to their lack of quality in attack and in delivery, but also Carlisle defending their box with a bit more quality and zeal than they have done this season. Gabriel Breeze was the man of the match from Sky Sports. What a great story, this 21-year-old local lad now in goal in such tough circumstances, but seemingly just like an absolute duck to water is how he's taken it. He's got very long arms. He holds shots well. He comes and claims crosses. He doesn't look to have anything holding him back, this young Breeze, and I think it's pretty exciting. Looks a great character as well. His middle name is Hendricks. He's got a very funky hairstyle and just a really nice way about him in that post-match interview, where he said if he hadn't been playing in this game or playing for Carlisle, he'd have been in the away end with the Carlisle fans. But he doesn't seem to have that naivety or a feeling of being overawed by the situation he's in. He seems completely at home, and I think it's absolutely great for Carlisle. And that win was massive. It brings them level, George, with Morecambe, who had a game that looked like it was winnable against a Gills team that hadn't won for months. But it was Gillingham that beat them by 1-0.
And deservedly so. Massive fair play to Gillingham here, because I had been really doubting their ability to win games. They've been so poor for such a long period of time. And Morecambe came into this, I thought, playing okay. But Robert McKenzie with the goal with 10 minutes or so to go was exactly what Gillingham deserved. Morecambe restricted to just 3 shots within the whole game, none of them particularly good chances. It felt like it may have been a frustrating day for Gillingham after a while, where the ball just kind of wasn't just going in until McKenzie was able to get the all-important goal. And that, I think, the significance had Morecambe won that game would have been massive in terms of the relegation picture. Because they really would have reeled Gillingham in. But after a very, very difficult few weeks, it's amazing what one result can do to the league table. When you look at it now, and a Nets Gillingham return to really struggling to pick up a single point, you'd think they probably have enough.
Another big one down the bottom was Harrogate and Accrington level on points heading into the weekend. And it's Harrogate who now put 10 points between themselves and the relegation zone. They went ahead through a set-piece goal, been given to Jasper Moon, was very clearly an own goal, but you go for your life, Jasper. Second goal, an equaliser from Woods, also from a set-piece. And the winner was from a set-piece, the second phase, at least this one. Josh March on the 1st of March with the match winner, James Belshaw. Hello, James, with a strong save to secure the victory. Harrogate now 10 points from safety, which I love. And Tranmere Vale, the first Tranmere game post Nigel Adkins. He has been sacked by the Palioses, and Andy Crosby was in the dugout here against his old side, Port Vale. And by all accounts, it was an improved Tranmere performance. It's probably not that much of a surprise. They couldn't have got much worse. Josh Hawkes was straight back in, having been out in the cold under Adkins. That was a statement from Crosby. And they went ahead through Dennis after an Amos mistake at the back for Port Vale. Equaliser came from Ronan Curtis, aided by a deflection, but a nice move down the right-hand side. And after that, Tranmere probably slightly more likely. A few Amos saves, almost a Ronan Curtis own goal, but I think the 1-1 draw was probably the fairest result. And that was the weekend in League Two.